Hey guys, we're back.
This is Mark and Michelle,
Episode 4.
and we are going to talk to you today about my future without autism, and hopefully your future without autism as well. And I had posted earlier in the week on Heal Your Autism's Facebook page with a short post, which I won't read, but I'll refer to here and there, about my future without autism and relating it to your possible future without it as well. And so we can dig right in unless you have something else you want to add.
No.
Okay. How about that first question?
How has your life improved on these diets?
Well, okay, the GAPS diet, doing that for 4.5 years. The first 2 years, very drastic changes, and the improvements, the very distinct improvements, were being able to hear more in other people besides just their words when I was communicating with them. For instance, if someone was trying to tell me something, I would get the words now, but I would get their tone of voice. I would also see emotion in their face, which I never noticed before, and I would notice muscle tension in the rest of their body, which explained to me they were either angry or upset or tense, or the ease in their muscle tension, which showed me they were more relaxed in what they were telling me.
How about we give an example, like, Mark, would you be willing to clean the bathtub?
Yes, I would be willing.
What did you get from that?
What I got from that was you weren't in a hurry, you weren't upset about anything, you weren't in a rush, so therefore I didn't need to be in a rush, nor did I need to be upset. So
how would you have interpreted that before?
I would have interpreted that before as just, would you go clean the bathtub? But when I was at Aspie, if somebody asked me to do something, there was always a sense of urgency in me. And so I felt like they were asking me to do it now. And I replied numerous times to requests from her as, I can't do it now. And I would get upset. And I see this in other Aspies too, and other high-functioning autistic people. And you guys might see this in your kids and other high-functioning autistic people that you live with. So, okay. But as an autistic person, I interpreted that as something that needed to be done immediately, and it felt like pressure.
What if I said, Mark, clean the bathroom?
Okay, see, now there is a little bit of tension in that, in the way she just said that. I never would have noticed that before at all. Now I can tell there's a little bit of urgency in it.
But if I had said that to him then, he would have really freaked out because it was a demand.
Yeah, it felt like a demand. Now, I say that, but when I was autistic, almost everything felt like a demand. And I think a lot of that goes back to autistic people, at least a lot of them, are in fight or flight mode all the time. And Michelle and I, we mentioned that before, but you always feel like you're being pushed around by life. And that really brings about a sense of victimization in your life. It did for me, and I've definitely seen that in other people with high-functioning autism as well. You feel pushed around. You just feel like everyone's asking you to do something right now. So,
right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You've seen that in your kids, in all your students, adults and kids as well.
Now, I always had trouble. I would ask you to do something, but you might not would do it. So, if I said, we're having company at 5 o'clock today, I really need the bathroom to be cleaned. I can't get to it myself. Now, what are you getting from that now?
Okay, what I'm getting from that now is there is some urgency to that, not just because she wants the house clean, but there are other people coming over, and it's important to have the house clean. I get that now. And but before, that wouldn't have sounded any different than, can you go please clean the bathroom? It wouldn't sound, when I was autistic, that sounded no different. Her asking me to do that because company was coming was no different than saying, can you go please clean the bathroom? It was no different. But now, it's worlds different. Because, well, not only that, there's why behind it as well.
Okay, so those are little little hints of what life is turning into.
Right. Well, not only that, relationships. And that'll be another thing to go into here. Coming out of the autism, I could see when people liked me, and I could see, and what told me that was I would see their focus or attention turned towards me. That was absolutely fascinating, because the first person I saw that in was one of my managers at work, and he worked in dairy, and I happened to come in one day, and I walked by him and I went, "Matt, what's up, man?" And he immediately turned to me and just started talking to me, and you could see his eyes light up. Now, that's cool, because I've always had to ask people, "Do you like me?"
Yes.
And at the beginning of our marriage,
the whole marriage, until you turned.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, the whole marriage.
Until he turned.
Until I got out of the autism, I always asked, "Do you like me?" Or, "Do you love me?" And now I know that there's a strong difference between like and love. Love is always there. Like is something that can be turned on or off at an instant, at a bad emotional transaction. So, being able to see other people like me makes me know that I'm connected. It actually, I guess you might say that it's difficult to get any meaning in your life if you don't know what you mean to other people.
I feel like the salt story has to come in here somewhere.
Okay.
So can you segue into that somehow?
The salt story. Okay. I've been a professional cook most of my life. And working at nice hotels like JW Marriott. There was one in Atlanta for a while. Very nice upscale restaurants in Atlanta and Denver and St. Louis. And cooking has always been important to me. I've always liked it. It's a form, even when I was autistic, it was a form of therapy for me. One place that I worked at in Atlanta, I worked during the day on the grill position, and we had a grilled portobello mushroom. You know the mushrooms, they're kind of big brownish gray mushrooms, about that big around with big stems. And I was working with Chef Antonio. Chef Antonio was Basque from Spain, and I was salting this mushroom before I put it on the grill. Well, I had always done it that way because, to me, you season food before you cook it and as you cook it. But Chef Antonio saw me doing that. He said, "Don't put salt on that mushroom." Okay, so I took that one off and put another one on there and salted it before I put it on the grill. He saw me salt it before I put it on the grill. He said, "Don't put salt on that mushroom." Okay, so I took that one off. Got another one, salted it, and put it back on the grill. Well, I put it on the grill. Chef Antonio goes, "I told you not to put salt on that. Don't salt the mushrooms. If you salt another mushroom, another one of those mushrooms, you're fired." Well, I finally got it. He had to threaten to fire me for me to get it. Now I would have immediately gotten it and would have been able to change my behavior and what I did. But back then...
Why do you think that happened?
Because I wasn't getting the emotions, the intensity of his meaning, emotional meaning behind his words. And so to me, I didn't really get how much he meant it. The words didn't seem to make sense. I mean, they made sense, but if he really meant for me to do that, a little more exaggerated hand gestures might have gotten through. But now, you know better at that because you spent 25 years communicating with autistic people. But I think that just happened because I wasn't getting the full range of emotion behind his "don't salt that mushroom."
Why couldn't you hear the words and know not to salt? Were you stuck in a muscle memory?
Well, and some of you folks out there who are cooks or have been professional cooks, or in any profession, you just do it on automatic pilot. And it can be difficult to break a habit, no matter what it is. And for me, it was just easiest not to think about it and to just do it. So by Chef Antonio threatening to fire me, it finally got through, I need to break this habit and not salt the portobello mushroom. You see what I mean? It was just a non-thinking habit, which we all get into. But for an autistic person, for me anyway, if you get into a non-thinking habit, it can be difficult to break a habit. It can. I know it's difficult for people without autism, but I think it's more difficult for people with autism to break a habit. So, as far as other things, was there something you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. Well, as far as other things, what made life easier for me, really, was learning how to understand what people were trying to say to me outside of their verbal communication. In other words, facial expressions, emotional intensity in their voice, tone of voice, that kind of thing. Being able to really get people. And because then all of a sudden, what made the world, I mean, empty buildings mean nothing. But people in those buildings make those buildings come alive. And then people themselves are alive. There's just so much more out there. And it added, I'd say, a third dimension. I mean, to me, when I was autistic, people were like cartoon characters, but now, all of a sudden, they became individuals. And it just wasn't a crowd of nameless, faceless cartoon characters. Now it was a crowd of people, and of individual people. And that was eye-opening to me, because I'm still seeing that even 4.5 years on.
One of my favorite stories is when we were walking through Target and you suddenly started coming on.
Oh, yeah. I think this is probably 6 to 8 months into the diet, into the GAPS diet, to be specific. And we went to a Target to shop. It was at night after it was dark. So I think it was in the fall. And we were walking through Target, and I noticed everything took on a brighter color. It's like somebody turned up color saturation on the TV, and it's almost overbearing. And
overwhelming?
Overwhelming, yeah. I guess that was the word, overbearing.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, but it was almost overwhelming. I had to squint to be able to cut out some of the brightness of the color. And we walked into Target. As we're walking down one of the aisles, all of a sudden I go, "Whoa!" She goes, "What?" And I said, "Man, all the colors that come out. What's up with that?" And I said, "Everything has color. I can see color everywhere." And physical has come online too. Color being one of them, and which was a great thing for me. And then a second thing that happened was my hearing improved. But that actually didn't happen until more than 4 years on the diet, just this past October. I had an issue with being on the phone and people trying to talk to me while I'm on the phone. And numerous times I got mad at her because she wanted to add something while I was on the phone to somebody. And that really made me incensed, really made me angry. And because I had trouble cutting out background noise to be able to hear the conversation. Well, this past October or November, we were at a meeting, and we were sitting there, other people were talking, somebody was talking to me, and I was talking to this person, and then another person was trying to talk to me too, at the same time, so 2 people were talking to me. That is the first time, so this is October, November of 2017, that was the first time that I did not get mad, and I didn't even notice that I didn't get mad until afterward. And I mentioned it to Michelle. She goes, "I noticed." And so my brain wiring changed enough for me to be able to carry on 2 conversations at once. And I say it's hearing. I just think my receptivity in my brain was able to multitask, or at least double task for the first time.
Was there something in your
yes.
post that you wanted to talk about?
Let's see what we've got here.
I see Rebecca is watching.
Hey, Rebecca, we haven't seen you in a while. How's California? All right, let's see. Well, we've talked about communication. So one of the other subjects, motivation. Okay, very important. many of you with kids on the spectrum and adults in your life who are on the spectrum may have noticed that motivation is seriously lacking in their lives. And I tried my hardest. I read books on motivation. I tried to give myself pep talks. Those things just didn't work. I was able to hold jobs without much trouble. I worked at one place for 7 years. Where I'm currently working now, I've been there almost 6. So I never had much trouble holding a job unless it was overwhelming. One example that comes to mind was a place in Denver, a restaurant. I started working in the evening. Well, they did 1,000 people for lunch and about 800 people for dinner. That was too much for me. I couldn't cook 13 or 14 orders at a time, so I didn't last very long there. I think it was about 2 weeks. But most places I was easily able to handle a job. But as far as motivation, I had no lack of motivation to work for someone else. But when it came to me, I had a serious lack of motivation. I had very much trouble getting myself to do my homework in college. We're talking things like organic chemistry, calculus, stuff like that. Now, I know most folks, I wouldn't have the motivation to do that either. That's horrible. But I actually liked the subjects. I just couldn't get myself to do it. Most people, if they like a subject, are happy to do it. But it didn't matter how much I liked it. I just couldn't motivate myself to get it done. And as I recovered on the GAPS diet, and even using the medical medium diet, my motivation has gone through the roof. In fact, we can talk about what happened this week. Michelle works during the day at school, and then I work in the evening at my job. But I get up during the daytime, and I do things related to Heal Your Autism on Facebook. I also clean the house, take care of the kiddies, that kind of stuff. When I was autistic, she would be pulling teeth to get me to do anything. Now, she was sick at the time as well because she'd had Lyme disease for years, but she needed my help, and I just didn't understand that. So motivation when I was autistic was so seriously lacking that it made life for us very difficult. And because I couldn't motivate myself enough to do what I wanted to do for me, and she couldn't motivate me well enough to help her out to get done what we needed to get done for us.
But you did cook. You always cooked.
I did always cook. That was the one thing I think that kept me going.
It kept me going.
Well, that's true because otherwise you would have had to, like you said, TV dinners and hot dogs. So, which we're glad you don't have to eat TV dinners and hot dogs. But motivation has gone through the roof. The GAPS diet and the medical medium diet. Now I get up and I do what I need to do. In fact, this week
now I get a text that says I did this and 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 this. Oh, okay.
Right? And she goes, I'm so glad you can help now. And, and it's funny because she texted me that back earlier this week. I'm so glad you can help now. But you know what I realized is that when I was autistic, I was doing everything I could to help me. And I couldn't even help myself. And you're going to find, I think, if you choose the road to recovery, that as your kids or your adults come out of it, that will be a question that they will probably talk about that. There was nothing I could do. I was trapped in a body and a brain that didn't work.
Yep.
And I've heard one other severely autistic person say that. I think her name was Carly Fleischman or Fleischer. She was Canadian, or is Canadian. She was a teenager. And someone gave her a computer. She sat down at it and she started writing about who she was on the inside. And all of a sudden, there was a whole person in there that was trapped, and I'm pretty sure she said this. I'll have to look it up to be sure. But she said, I am trapped in a body and brain that doesn't work. Now, think about that. There was a whole personality in here that, as I healed up, came out. And there were things that came out I didn't even know existed. She didn't know existed. So think about your kids. They're wanting to get out. Not because autism is a death sentence or horrible or whatever, but it does make your life difficult. At least for me it did. Now for others I can't say, and I'm not going to. But for me, it did, and I wanted out. And so at some point I set an intention in my head, I want out. and that's when we came upon the GAPS diet back in 2013. Let's see, other things we want to talk about.
Look at your thing there.
Let's see. Learning. Now, learning is really communication. And I had to think about that when I was writing the post about your future without autism, because how is learning done? It's communicated. A teacher is trying to communicate a concept to your child. Well, if communication is cleared up because the child has been recovered from autism or healed from your autism, or for the adult, all of a sudden learning is going to take a spike upward and become much easier. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't have learning issues, but if autism is taken out of that person's life, learning is definitely going to get better. Because as I heard a psychologist explain one time, there are two styles of learning. Implicit learning, which is where you just kind of pick it up as you go along, and you don't need overly detailed explanations. And then explicit learning, where you pick it up while you go along, but you have to have very detailed, methodical, logical explanations given to you. Now, most people with autism, at least I've heard ones that I've known, and I was this way, had to learn things explicitly, in detail, over long periods of time, practice after practice after practice after practice after practice. In fact, I'd say there's more practice involved for a person with autism than there is for a person without autism.
Going back to that muscle memory and you're salting the mushroom, that was probably practiced and practiced and practiced.
Yeah, in fact, it was so practiced. It's like the neural networks in your head. The stronger that the neural networks get, the more they take to reverse over time. And it used to take me 3 or 4 months to learn a job well enough to feel like I had mastered it. But I noticed in other people that worked around me, they could learn it in about 30 days, and they would be fine.
How long does it take you now?
About 30 days, a little less. It's just, no job is difficult anymore. My life is so much easier because I can communicate and learn well enough that I don't have to spend months trying to master something. I can master it in maybe 2-3 weeks and go on about my life. That always frustrated me. Things seemed much easier for people without autism as far as learning and communication. And here I was literally slogging through a swamp, knee-high in quicksand, mud, whatever you want to call it. That's how it felt. It felt like swimming through molasses most of the time. And now, I don't know how to describe it, except that, you know what, it's just like you normally walk and normally breathe. It feels normal now. All right, anything else we want to talk about?
Do you have something to end with?
Well, I've really got nothing else to end with. That covers the 3 subjects that I had covered in my post. But you think about, here we go. Think about your child learning things so easily that they need very little practice.
Or help.
That they don't dread their homework. They may not want to do it because they'd rather play, but hey, they can actually play now with kids normally instead of being isolated and feeling like they have to stay in their room all day. And think about their own motivation. They want to be with other people because they can understand people. That's, for me, that's how autism held me back. I couldn't communicate with people, and I wanted to badly. I wanted to learn very badly, but the autism kept me from doing the 2 things that I really wanted to do in life. Now that isn't the case. So you think about that, and whether you want to start on the journey with the GAPS and the medical medium, or either or, because there is someone in there who wants to get out and connect with you.
Yes. And on that note, we will see you next week.
We will.
This is Mark and Michelle.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.